Now we're ready to add our first cushion on the bottom here. And we'll do that once again in the top and perspective views. Tap the space bar. Create polygon primitives, cube. Draw it out in the top view. And then drag it up in the perspective view. And we can enter various display modes. For example, X-ray or wireframe unshaded in the various views. Let's position it, move it up. Center it. And then set its parameters. Go into Polycube 1. Set the width to 66. The height, I'll try 16. Let's try a little bit less, maybe 12 centimeters. Say 14. Somewhere in there. 13. And the depth I'll make 72. Or a little bit more, 75. We do want to match our reference as closely as possible. We'd feel our way through this either numerically or with a channel box slider. Select the name and middle mouse drag. Rename it, call it Bottom Cushion 1. Give it some detail in the input node here. Subdivisions width of 20 and also depth of 20. Height of only 4. We want to bevel the edge and soften it up and round it out so it's not so boxy. Tap the space bar in the perspective view. Let's isolate the object. We can do that from the panel toolbar here. Isolate select, and everything else in the current view will be hidden. To round out the cushion, we want to bevel all of the corner edges on the object, but not the interior edges. Let's select all those corners. We want to just use the select tool, right click and go into edge component mode. Double click to select an edge loop, and to add, hold down Control and Shift and double click to add edge loops. Just going around to the entire object and select all of them. Tumble around to the opposite side. Hold down Control, Shift, and double click to add edge loops. You can check it in wireframe, which is 4. Go back to shaded, which is 5. You can check it in X-ray mode. We've got our selection. Let's do the bevel. Edit mesh, edge bevel, and go into the inputs and choose polybevel 1. We can adjust this a little bit. Let's reduce this fraction amount. That's the overall size. Middle mouse dragging to create a change in that value. Number of segments, let's try 3. So the fraction value, I don't know, maybe 0.25. Make it a little bit larger. 0.3. We certainly don't ever want to see polygons crash into each other. Just paying close attention to that. So I think I'm in a good place if I set this to 0.4. These reach a sort of equilibrium in their size. But if I change it to a value that's too high, I might have issues. Like if I set it to a value of 1 maybe. And now it's sort of self-intersecting. Try a value of 0.2. So I've added some softness or roundness to that. I haven't dealt with the overall poofiness or stuffed character of this. I'm actually going to do that last. I'm going to sort out the sort of boxy aspects of this first. What we'd like to do here is add a bead. And to do that, we can do some extrusions on this surface. But you'll notice at these extreme corners where 3 edge loops meet, we have a triangle. And that structure is going to be problematic for us when we do our extrude. What we want to do to prepare for our extrude is to make sure that all the vertices on these corner edge loops are at the same elevation or the same Y value. So they'll be flat as seen from the side and front views. I'll select some to show you. Right click and go into vertex and select some of these that are on an edge loop here. Here's one. Hold down Control Shift and select a couple more. Tap the space bar and frame selected in all views with Shift F. And now we can kind of see this. So here's the top view. Here's the front view and side view. And it's kind of hard to tell which are selected because they may be on the opposite side of the object. So we might need to go around to the other side and do our experiment. And that's easier for me to see here. So you can see how these are at different heights in the y-axis. So I can select those. In fact, I want to drag a rectangle around to select those. And what you'll see is it's selecting all these down a row. So that is going to affect the shape here. So be cautious about that, but grab the scale tool and we want to scale in Y. Kind of level that out. And it's mostly okay. I'm a little bit concerned about this here. So maybe these need to get moved. I can select them. But basically what you're trying to do is make sure that these are all at the right height and there's no major distortion on the mesh. And we need to do it for both sides. I'm not going to bother doing the bottom really. You can do that if you want in your own time, but you can see these. I want to select those and scale them with the R tool. Scale them down and maybe make a couple minor adjustments. Move tool is W. And likewise, this edge loop should be flattened too. Scale is R. Bring that down. And on the other side too. The tops definitely I need. That's going to be a much better platform for me to extrude from here. This is a nice clean surface. Cool. So I've got that built out. And now to do the actual extrude, I'm only going to do this for the top and bottom areas here. So there won't be a bead running down vertically here, just around the top edges and the bottom edges. To extrude the faces out, we want to select an entire face loop. And to do that, we'll want to use the select tool, which is Q. And right click and go into face component mode. Select a face and then shift double click an adjacent face to select an edge loop. And to add to that selection, hold down Control Shift and click. And you can extend the edge loop once again with Shift double click. And go around once again and select that whole edge loop. It just doesn't know which direction to go around corners, so you have to tell it. Hold down Control Shift click and then Shift double click. Now I've got the entire top selected. I need to do the bottom too. Once again, hold down Control Shift and then Shift double click. Now I've got all the top and bottom edge loops selected, and double check that with wireframe view, which is 4. And tumble around and check it everywhere. Maybe go into a black background, Alt B. Try to be clear on what you've selected and what you haven't. Okay, and with that selection made, once again, do an extrude. Now I've poked around a bit in these attributes for the extrude tool and figured out what values I need in advance. In your own work, you're going to need to allot time to experimentation and trying to sort of feel your way through finding the right values that are optimal for your situation. I'm not even going to use the manipulator. I'm just going to enter values directly. So in the Poly Extrude Face 1 node, I'll set the local translate Z here to a value of 0.2 and press enter. And let's look at this in shaded mode once again with the 5 key. And now you'll see we've got a little bit of a projection there. There it is. Also adjust the offset value. Set that to a negative 0.2. Press enter. Let's expand it out a bit. Made a sharper corner in there. I'll do another extrude. I haven't lost my selection. Edit mesh, face extrude. And for local translate Z this time, again 0.2, but offset I'll set to a different value. Let's try positive 0.1. That's made it smaller. We could feel our way through these by entering in values, or of course by using the channel box slider. We could select offset and middle mouse drag and try to get a rough idea. All right, so let's try 0.1. I'm going to do another extrude. Edit mesh, face extrude. And this last time, local translate Z, 0.1. But a high offset of 0.3. And check your work. In this case, 0.3 didn't work despite my notes. So I'll try a lower value, 0.2. That's better. We just want to make sure it doesn't self-intersect or do anything weird. Or maybe 0.15. We can also adjust the other nodes in the history. I can go back to poly extrude face 2, adjust its offset, maybe make it 0.15 and see what that does. Cool, so I'm pretty happy with that. Go back to object mode and deselect the object, and you'll see some of the edges are hard and some are soft. We can clean that up really easily. Just select, go into normals. In fact, we can soften edges for the entire model because there are no hard edges on this. Our next step will be to define the UV layout for this. At this point, we can go ahead and increment and save again.